Hi, this is Damien AtHope, and I'm an axiological atheist, which can simply be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. And I'm going to address today monotheism, or single deity religions. And my background is I was a Christian for 35 years, and then when I was in college, I learned stuff about the other religions and the Bible and science, and then because of that, I became an atheist. I realized the conclusion of atheists or whatever. I realized that all the theistic claims that I had believed before were basically baseless, and a lot of arguments from ignorance or just faith, which to me still is in a sense an argument from ignorance, to believe that which I wish to believe because I wish to believe it. Anyways, so once I started understanding, more about religions, one of the things that kind of was curious to me is I wondered, are all monotheistic religions like the, Abrahamic one that I had been raised in, are they, equally male and female? In other words, like paganism is conceived to have, many deities, often having male and female deities. And so as I looked into monotheism more, or single deity religions, I started to realize that why are basically all monotheistic religions ones that have a male god, or in a sense use male pronouns for their god? And so I see monotheism now as basically monotheism. In man we trust. And so I'm going to list, and you got to understand, I'm going to do my best at reading these religion names, but if I make an error, well, I'm trying. Anyways, the broader definition of monotheism is characterized by traditions as Bábism, Bahá'í Faith, Balinese Hinduism, Cao Dai, Cheondoism, Christianity, Deism, Eckankar, some Hindu sects such as Shiva Ism or Vaishnavism, Islam, Judaism, Mandaeism, Rastafari, Seicho, Sikhism, Tengrism, Tenrikyo, Yazidism, and Zoroastrianism, as well as elements of, in a sense, earliest or pre sort of grouping of monotheistic type religion can be found in the early religions such as Atheism and ancient Chinese religion and Yahwism. So it also makes you wonder, really, why does, in a sense, a claimed deity, have a gender to begin with? And why would someone say that a deity is a male or a female? But specifically, let's focus on the fact that monotheism is basically, a single God religion, and that God happens to be male or pronounces pronouns as male. But the thing is, when you say that God is a male, in a sense, are you saying God has a penis? Are you saying that God, in a sense, has some sort of a connection to a Y chromosome? And why isn't there, in a sense, a lady God? Or why isn't God actually genderless? Or, in a sense, dual gendered? Well, I think that a simple way to understand this is probably the fact that a lot of monotheistic religions are or seem to profess ideas, not all, but a lot that seem to have a kind of a misogynistic or sort of a sexist, bent to them, or there's sexist elements in them. And I think that possibly relates to why the choice of male. So we'll start with Atonism, or the Amana heresy, refers to the religious changes associated with the 18th dynasty pharaoh, AtHope, and also better known, accepted as Eckanism. And Aken means horizon of the Aten. Aten, or Etten or Aten is ancient, in a sense, Egyptian disk of the sun. In ancient mythology, its origins, aspects of the male god Ra. For 15 centuries, though, the Egyptians had worshipped, in a sense, an extended family of gods and goddesses. Each of them had, in a sense, their own elaborate sets of priests and systems and temples and shrines and rituals. Then the male god Aten became a focus of monotheistic religion of Atenism. It was relatively obscure type of the sun god without, in a sense, there being that one time of the Atenism sort of period for the religion. And it would have basically been a figure that didn't even show up much in Egyptian history if it wasn't for being promoted in that way. So then Bábism, also known as the Bahá'í Faith, probably pronouncing that wrong, is an Abrahamic monotheistic religion that professes that there is one incorporeal, unknown, and incomprehensible God who manifests his will in an unending series called manifestations of God. But they use the pronoun his. And then the Bahá'í Faith or Bahá'í teachings are in a similar way to other monotheistic faiths. The God is considered single and all-powerful. And their teacher, Baha'u'llah, or something like that, taught the religion is orderly and progressive, revealed by one God through the manifestations of God, who are the founders of the major world religions throughout history, such as it was proclaimed Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, being the most recent of these, in a sense, proclamations of the Bab. So Bahá'ísm believes that God periodically reveals his self, using the male pronoun, will through divine messengers, and whose purpose transforms the character of mankind into a developed moral, spiritual qualities. In Balinese Hinduism, traditionally a religion that was called by different names, and overall, though, it was an amalgamation of Indian religions and indigenous animist customs that existed in Indonesia archipelago before the arrival of Islam or the Dutch colonialism, and how they use to describe the, in a sense, deity is there's one supreme deity and all other gods are only manifestations of him, and that is emptiness and considered the origin of the universe, and all other divinities emanating from him. And he is often associated with the sun god, depicting in a human form with flames around him. His nakedness, expressed in his consciousness, is no longer carried away by his sense faculties. Anyways, a lot of him, he, his. So male pronouns again. And then Cao Dai, a god in a sense Vietnamese religion, literally the highest lord or the highest power, the supreme deity believed by them to have created the universe. The symbol of faith is the left eye of God, representing the yang, masculine, ordering, positive and expansive activity, and the male creator, the balanced by the yin activity of the mother goddess. But they only focus on, in a sense, the single male creator. I'm just saying the yin would have been the other before. So, and then there's Cheondoism, which is a 20th century Korean religion ideology based on 19th century religious movement. And they believe in the Lord of Heaven, and it's venerated in a sense. Also, it's a single highest deity, and it is known also to be connected to the heaven, and probably connects to Shino in Korean. And it's the god of heaven, the concept of sky god, particular to Korean in its sense, shamanism. And it includes in a sense, highest deity, or the Jade Emperor, or the, in a sense, divine regent. And in the mythology, was portrayed, this deity was portrayed as the Emperor of Heaven himself. In other words, using the male pronoun. And there's Christianity, which everyone probably knows has a male, God, or uses male pronouns. And it's seen as a belief in the one God Father, the Jesus Christ, also male, which is the Son of God, and then the Holy Spirit, which I don't know if that's generally professed as being male, but there's certainly the other two. But I'm sure that they probably would, someone would agree that it's probably not a female spirit, although that would be an interesting question to ask. But then there's Deism, which is derived from Latin deus, which is masculine, because the feminine would be dia, and these are meanings for gods or deities. So in a sense, deism is derived from the masculine form of the term for God. And deism is a philosophic belief that positions that although, in a sense, God exists, and they use the male pronoun to drive the word, and it's an uncaused first cause, ultimately responsible for the creation of the universe. God does not interact directly or subsequently into the created world. And there's Eckankar, which is a religion founded in 1965, and it's in a sense a god named given by Guru Nanak, and which is in a sense part of Sikhism. Or Sikhism, and the name is basically that they're trying to use is Eckankar. Eckankar is a symbol of unity of God in Sikhism, meaning God is one or one God. There's an opening phrase in one of their writings that presents the in a sense, a compilation from Guru Nanak. It talks about, in a sense, in the 38 hymns, the end of the compilation, one universal creator God, truth and eternal in his name, creative being, without fear, without envy, timeless and deathless form, not affected by the circle of life or death, self-existence. He can be realized through grace of true and eternal Guru, who has the power to enlighten us. Eckankar is although not affiliated with any other religious group. In a sense, it's part of the new and alternative religions, but also has traces. Eckankar tries to, in a sense, trace its stuff back to, in a sense, Eckankar masters or whatever, and tries to say that it goes back to the 970 living Eek masters, in a sense, which are avatars for Vishnu in Hinduism. In addition to Hindu iconography, Vishnu is also a male god, usually depicted as having a pale dark blue complexion and 4 arms. And anyways, he holds a lotus flower in his, lower hand. And so it's definitely relating to, in a sense, a he, a his. It's a male deity. So then there's Shiva Ism, which is one of the major traditions in Hinduism that reveres Shiva as the supreme being. It is one of the largest sects, in a sense, where Shiva is worshipped as the creator and the destroyer of worlds. It is, in a sense, supreme God overall. And his fiercest aspects, he is depicted as slaying demons. And Shiva's roots probably go back to Veda literature, probably in the 2nd millennium BC. And then there's Vishnuism, or one that considers of Hinduism, that considers, in a sense, the Supreme Lord to be Vishnu. He is one of the principal deities in or of Hinduism, and it's, in a sense, but in Vishnuism, is seen as the supreme being or the absolute truth. And his avatars, most notably, can include other proposed deities or forms. Anyways, but that's a monotheistic with male again. And then Islam, and there's some people that try to say that Islam, in a sense, doesn't have a male god. I've heard this before, just like Sikhism tries to say that too. But they definitely use male pronouns all over the place, especially Islam. And Islam is an Abrahamic monotheistic religion that teaches, and there's only one God, Allah. And God, Allah, is in a sense described in chapter 112 of the Quran, saying, He is God and one and only God, the eternal absolute, He begotteth not, nor is He begotten, and there are none like unto Him. So it's saying He, and Him. Anyway, so then there's Judaism, which is an ancient monotheistic Abrahamic religion with the Torah as its foundational text. And Judaism is considered, in a sense, to be the religion expressing the covenant with Jews and God established, or whatever, with the children of Israel. It encompasses a wide body of text, but it also it talks in the frame of things as God being, says God, in a sense, created the world good and make it fit for mankind. But when man corrupts sin, then God decides to destroy His creation, and saying that the only righteous one was Noah, and his relationship between man and God, in a sense, the ancestral chapters of like Genesis. And so that's a male god. And then there's Mandaeism, but in a sense this is, they call it St. John Christians, is a Gnostic religion of the Mandaeans or Semites, and speak a dialectic of Eastern Arabic known as Mandic. And that, in a sense, they believe that the cosmos was created by archetypal man, who produced in his own shape within the Middle East, but also outside their community. The Mandaeans are more commonly known as Subens. Anyways, so they have, in a sense, a male god again. As they believe, also they have some references that are seeming to sound like their name for their god is the same god of the Egyptians, god Fat, and which is a male creator god who exists out of his own will. And then there's Rastafarian, which is an Abrahamic religion developed in Jamaica in the 1930s. And Rastafarians, in a sense, get their specific interpretations from the Bible. And it's a monotheistic belief in the single male god, referred to as Jah. And God is man, and man is God. And then there's Seicho New Li, Japanese, in a sense, house of growth. And this is a newer religion in a sense, but it still has it's a belief kind of like a spiritual enlightenment, but it still has that man cannot live by bread alone. So it sounds like they're quoting, like stuff that relates to other monotheistic religions. And then it says, since he is a spiritual being, his physical being needs more than spiritual. He needs, in a sense, also, it's postured that we sit with legs bent, the left foot resting on the right, and the left foot symbolizes the masculine principle, the positive polarity in heaven. And the right stands for water, feminine, negative, and the earth. But it says, visualizing the kingdom of God in this manner, continue with the following. In other words, you chant this, or you say this, pray this. I am in the kingdom of God, of grand harmony, and as a child of God, I am receiving from Him an infinite supply of His infinite power. Life power. And so again, it's a male deity. And then there's Sikhism, meaning discipline or seeker, is a monotheistic religion and from India and Pakistan, and seeks, in a sense, like I said before, scriptures open with the deity Eckankar, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, which is the supreme power of, in a sense of, or supreme being of God. And although that they say that they don't, their deity doesn't have a gender, they still use, it says the union of God, and it knows His will, so they use, in a sense, His, He. And they also talk about my master, and then the one, He is the one, my brother, and He alone exists. And so, in a sense, they're still using male pronouns. And then there's Tangerism, which is a Central Asian religion categorized by shamanism, animism, totemism, and sort of a half poly sort of monotheism, but it's basically monotheistic in a sense, and with ancestor worship. It just depends on how they practice it. And in a sense, it was the religion of the Turks, the Mongols, the Hungarians, the Huns, some other cultures. Anyways, in it, in Eastern steppes, Tengrism developed more, in a sense, centralized hierarchical policies than the Western steppe did. But nonetheless, the chief male god was Tanger, the heaven, considered to be strikingly similar to the Indo-European sky god, Deism. I believe I'm saying that right. And the structure, in a sense, reconstruction of a Proto-Indo-European religion is closer to that of the early Turks than to the religion of any people in the Near East or Mediterranean in antiquity, according, in a sense, to a scholar that Deism, in a sense, is literally Sky Father or Shining Father, and it reflects a Latin, in a sense, like Jupiter or the Greek Zeus. And it was original, in a sense, for Mongol Khans. They were followers of the Tangri. And the fourth great Khan of the Mongol Empire said, "We believe that there is only one God by whom we live and by whom we die, and for whom we have an upright heart. But as God gives us different fingers of the hand, so he gives men diverse ways to approach him." That's the account of the Mongols' diary, in a sense. So, once again, that it's a male deity. And then Tenrikyo, or Kuro, is a Japanese new religion, which is neither strictly monotheistic in a sense or sort of pantheistic, but it originated in the 19th century, and the followers believe that God of origin, or God of truth, known by several different names, in a sense, they see it as a sacred name of a single God, the creator of the universe. And then it says that spoken through the lips, and it's God the parent, and this God the parent himself that is speaking through the mouth of the one who female who professed to understand this religion, or where it comes from. And so again, it's a new religion, but even though it's in a sense originating sort of from a female who created this, or says that she understood this, a lot of times they just call it the God parent. It still says God parent himself, so it's still professing that the God parent is a male. And then there's the Yazidism, in a sense, or is the religion of the Yadi people, in a sense, an ethno-religious group of ethno-Kurdish, in a sense, minority, indigenous to Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and also can be found in Armenia and Georgia, as well as other places. But it's as elements, in a sense, of an ancient Mesopotamian sort of religion. But it has similarities, though, with Abrahamic religions, such as Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and is well established. However, there's similarities between some of the, in a sense, ancient faiths, probably that were dominant among the Western Iranians. And anyways, so their original god of the Yadi was considered to be, in a sense, remote and inactive in relation to his creation, except to, in a sense, contain and bind it together with his essence and his first, in a sense, self. But anyway, so once again, this is a male god, or male pronouns used for this god. And then there's Zoroastrianism, and Zoroastrianism has a belief in Ahura Mazda, the spirit, in old Iranian religions, that he had not yet been given, in a sense, a title as uncreated spirit until it was given by Zoroaster. But again, it still goes back to it's in a sense, it's a male deity. Zoroaster further stated Aru Mazda created spirits known as the Yazda to aid him, and so he's still saying that it's a he. And I think that it's important to understand this, because I think it helps understand monotheism in general. Because to me, paganism kind of goes back to probably around 12,000 years ago, and when it started, to me, it's basically female goddesses and then animal deities. But some of the female goddesses, either at that time or sometime later, they had like a third gender. So it wasn't that it was like it is, today, where some people think that transgenderism is something new, or that being, in a sense, non-binary gender is something new. That it actually can be seen in the pre-monotheistic religions. But even after the time of early monotheism, there is still elements that you can hear in the religions, like the Bible, where it uses male pronouns, but then talks about in ways that sound very feminine. And there's definitely different verses and different expressions that, in terms of what the God's name is, like the God, the original God, in a sense of the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, was supposed to be El Shaddai, which Shaddai is like the breasted one, or the breasted mountains, and to me certainly has more of a connotation, just like Elohim is a term for, El means in a sense God, which was the god of the Canaanites, and is used like I think 150 something times also in the Bible to reference the God of the Bible. But most of the time it uses Elohim, which is different than the Yahweh term for God. But Elohim can mean either feminine, or it can mean, in a sense, multiple deities in one, self, whatever. So in other words, almost like dual gendered or something, or multiple gendered, or third gender. And then it's understood in the Hebrew is or interpreted as being just that it means the specific God that relates to the children of Israel. But if you look at the source for that word, that's not really to me very accurate. Although it can be considered their deity, so can El, since it's used 150 something times. And El directly relates to the Canaanite religions, to their God before. So to me, the understanding is that what made it, in a sense, and like I said, so 12,000 years ago, it starts with females, I believe, because you can see all these types of expressions of female and very little expressions of male outside of like hunting cult stuff. And females seem to be buried as shamans at first, and then later there's men start to be buried as shamans, but it's much later. But somewhere around 7,000 years ago or so, you start to see male deities added. They may have come in a little bit before that, I don't know, but they seem to take really prominence by that time in the Balkans. And so to me, the paganism starts in Turkey, and it moves west, and goes into the Balkans. By the time it gets there, it starts off pretty much still female. But then about 7,000 years ago, I think because of the between 7,000 and 8,000, there's a big drop in the genetic distribution between men and women. It's about, I think it's 17 women for every one man, in a sense, reproduce. So either men were somehow not reproducing or not allowed to reproduce, or they were being, in the sense, war or something, they were being killed. So either they were, in a sense, like slaves or captives, or the culture wasn't letting them, or it was the fact that they were being, in a sense, killed or harmed, or the women were being hoarded and captive in some kind of a way to get that type of a large genetic imbalance between the genders. So to me, that's about the time that you start to see the male god too. Is the time that you see this big, drop in gender for men, in a sense, reproducing as comparative to the females. That's the time that you have this emergence of the male, in a sense, god. And like I said, if it came before, it certainly wasn't a big deal. And this is a time that it starts to take prominence. Then by about somewhere around 6,000 years ago in the Balkans, to me is like the first proto-king. There's certainly in the Varna culture, there's the burial of an elite male that looks like he has, stuff that later is seen, like holding things in his hand, hammers or whatever, that seem to reference like the stuff that the kings do. And he has more gold in his in this one grave than the whole rest of the world at that same time. And then about 5,000 years ago, or so, 5,500, you start to get the kings and city-states sort of a things, where the cities become really, really powerful. And then by about 5,100, you have Egypt unifying. And so by the time it does that, about 5,000, you have, in a sense, an institutionalized, progressed religion, where it becomes, in a sense, law, because the whole, in a sense, area becomes unified under, or tries to become unified under, in a sense, one set of religious ideas, sort of. Instead of where, like in Mesopotamia at first, where the city-states sort of start, they instead of a whole region, they have different cities, in a sense, fighting each other, or choosing a particular god, that they favor for that particular city, or a few gods. And so it wasn't a unified thing. But very shortly after Egypt does it, around 4,000, I think 900 or something, then Mesopotamia, in a sense, sort of becomes more like that, more unified. And so it's about that time that, to me, that they really start to have a more provenance of kings and rulers. Because what the pharaoh did is basically say that, only a male can, in a sense, be a pharaoh. Although there definitely was some females that cross-dressed and projected themselves as pharaohs later. But it's still, the point is, they had, in a sense, cross-dress, be male-like, or take on the male, identity, to be able to be seen as ruler. And I think this sets the stage. This sort of so to me, it's like sexism was a slow process of one thing after another. It wasn't like it just all hit like a bomb. It just pieces and pieces, and it becomes normalized in more and more pieces. So it's about 4,000 years ago or less that you start to get monotheistic religious ideas. And then even as they start, they're not super strong. And then they basically, like henotheism, the fact of seeing, in a sense, one god as the main god, but you can allow other gods. And some of them will say, like I read, that some of them could be, in a sense, avatars, or they're just, other representations of, or expressions, but they just still relate to the only one that really is power, or that really matters, or one is worshipped, is, in a sense, the one deity. And then that basically, so by 4,000, then by about 2,000 years ago, there basically isn't really, besides a few areas and a little way, there's mainly all the, in a sense, goddess faiths are, in a sense, wiped out or taken over, overrun, whatever, by that time. And so you basically, you just have this then vacuum that's, filled in with monotheism. And it really starts taking off. And in a sense, one of the things too is it's a type of religion that tries to find converts. It's not like all religions, in a sense, do that, because it's not that they can't get converts, but not all, in a sense, religions try to force everyone, to believe the same faith. And so once that happens, then it which I see is still part of the like the Abrahamic religions especially, but Judaism really doesn't go out and try to do it. It's really the offshoots of that, the cults of Judaism, in a sense, that of Christianity and Islam, that really go out and try to dominate the world. And but like I said, it really made me think, more about monotheism, and more about this conception of how we ended up with these male god, in a sense, dominated religions. And what does it even mean, when you say that, a god has a gender, or when you choose to only use male pronouns to explain a god. And I hope that you enjoyed, the ideas and understanding that I offered, and have a great day.